Right, so now we're gonna talk about the navigation header. Of course we get it, but yeah, just empty, right? So we wish that we could add some titles or maybe some text or customize fonts or put a logo or something like that. And of course we can do it. Now there's two ways to do it. You can do it on the actual component. So when React Native navigation kicks in, it's gonna detect the properties and it's gonna change it only on that screen. If I do it on users, it's going to apply only on users. But of course, you will be adding all these properties just on one screen. If you want to give a global kind of a styling or properties, you can do it on the app.js. We're going to do it later. First, I'm going to do this one. So how can we, of course, how can we do this? So I'm going to say static, and I'm going to explain you in a minute. Navigation options. So when the React Native navigation kicks in, it will look for this variable, this static navigation options. Since this is a static, this means that this will kick in before anything else kicks in. So when React Native navigation needs to create the header and everything else, before doing anything else, it's going to grab this and it's going to create it with whatever stylings or properties you're adding. So again, don't make a mistake with the name because React Navigation is going to look for this. So for example, I'm going to say title and I'm going to say, okay, so we are on the users or maybe user application or screen. So I'm going to reload the application, go to users, and we get users. Now, let me just show you something. I'm going to reload it on Android, and sometimes you're going to get different things on different devices because they are different devices. So yeah, sometimes you will need to make some changes just to make them work. But by default, the users on Android, it's at the left, and by default on iOS, it's centered. Of course, we can change this behavior just a little bit. Okay, so let me just go back. Of course, we can do much more than this. Let me just take you to the documentation. If you go to configuring the header bar inside fundamentals and you scroll down, you're going to get adjusting header styles. So you get an example of what you can do right here. But don't worry, we're going to do it right now. I'm going to go and do the comma. So you get a property called header style. So header and then style and open and close. So this one, of course, will add a style property just like this to the actual header. And I'm talking about the text or the background of the header. So for example, if I go to header style, you can add a basic property like background color and say that I want a red or a reddish color. So F4511E is going to have a nice red. So if I go to users, we get the background, and same thing for Android. So let me just reload it. I'm going to go to users and we get it, right? So of course you can pass some properties, style properties to the background of the header. So we get pretty much the same idea for the text inside, right? But it's a little bit different. We get some very specific options. We cannot do whatever we want right here, and we cannot just add a style. So it says, okay, so header tint color is the property that will manage, the color, for example. And then you get the header title style that will manage the type of font, the font family, the font weight, for example, or maybe the color or something like that. Okay, so actually not the color, we get this one for the color. So I'm going to go back and just do that. I'm going to go say comma, and we want the header and then tint and then color. And I'm going to say that this one it's blue. So if I reload it, let me just reload the application, we get it on blue. So we should be getting the same thing on Android. I'm not going to keep checking both just to save time, users. All right. So okay, what else? With the other one, we can make some changes on the font styling. Maybe not the color because we already did it. For example, it's going to be title and then style. All right. Okay, so notice when we do tint, is doing this on pretty much everything we have right here, on any font or option we get right here. So the title style will only apply to the title. So for example, if I say font weight, I'm going to say no, bold. I believe it's already bold. Maybe not. Go to users. And it's a little bit bolder. Yeah. So we could change the color. I never tried it before. Now that I think about it, I always get the default color. And I add icons at the top. So I'm going to say green. See what happens. I'm going to reload it. And oh, okay, so we get green. So with the title style, we can modify whatever we want on the, as a font, of course, with the title. All right, really, really cool. Okay, so all of this is happening on the users. If we go back home, we get nothing again. So this is because we are doing it right here, right? So of course you could apply the same logic on different components. For example, the home, let's say. So I'm going to go here and say that, this one is going to be home. I'm not going to do everything else. Just going to say home. So if I reload it, again, we get home, right? Now the thing is that I will have to add the stylings again and everything again. And, it's just, we don't do that. What I would like to do is I would like to set up on the app.js default configuration for all the headers. Now, after we do so, if you have a specific configuration on this component, the default ones will not apply. This one will override whatever default you get. So it's really cool. So I'm going to go to app, and remember that we pass to the stack navigator two different arguments. The first ones are the screens. So the second one is kind of the default configurations of everything. So if we go right here, going to say comma, we're going to add, and actually this is the property we need to use, is called default navigation options. Of course, this one is going to be just an object, and this one it's pretty much what we are doing right here. We could still add header style, we could still change the color. So let me just copy this and paste it inside here, and we're going to see that this works. We get a background color. I'm going to change it to something else, maybe green, so we can tell the difference. The tint, I don't know, white, whatever. And I'm just going to change the header to bold. That's okay. So I'm going to reload the application, and we know we get bold and we get header. If we go to users, of course, it's overriding the main styles. So on Android, again, I believe this works pretty much the same. This one is really ugly, so what you can do comma, you can do flex 1, and let's see if this works. I'm not sure it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. So I believe that after the flex, I'm going to go and say text align, just like this. And of course, we're going to do center because we want to center. So if I reload it, there we go. And on Mac, of course, we get the default behavior, which is centered. All right, so very cool. All right, so let's talk about something else, of course, related to this. Okay, so let me take you to the docs. Right now we are in the docs, and you get a bunch of examples that you can actually run this code, and this is going to take you to a kind of an online simulation. Now, if you want to render this, they have a queue. If you want to render this as soon as possible, you will need to create an account. Of course, they need to get it to generate a database, and that makes sense. But of course, if you wait the queue at the end, you're gonna get it right here. But this is not what I want to show you. So right now we get the docs and all the information, the guides with some examples, and then you get the API. So on the API, you're gonna get information of what you can do, navigation actions, stack actions. What we care right now is the create stack navigator. So if I go to this one, you're gonna get a bunch of information of what you can do, which options you get with the stack navigator. I'm gonna start all the way to the top. So whenever we create right here, we get the route configs, and that's what we are doing, the route configs, and then you get the navigator config. So again, the configurations. So right from the start, they give you, okay, you can create a profile with a screen, with a path, and navigation options. So right from the start, we were doing the navigation options on the actual component. What you can do it on the actual path, on the actual route config. You can do comma right here and do navigation options, for example, and do it on the home screen. So I'm going to say navigation options. We get the context and we bring navigation. We will talk about this in a few sections, don't worry. And I'm just going to delete this and going to say home. Just home. Right now we are defining the home right here. So if I comment this out and reload the application, we should be getting the same thing, right? And we do. The only difference is that now we are defining the default for this specific screen inside the route configs. All right, let's go back to the docs. Now the next one is going to be navigator config, and this one is what actually we've been doing. So we get the initial route name. We actually are using that one, so you can guess what it is. Then initial route params, if you want to pass params, this is where we do it. The initial route key, if you want to add an ID. Then the default navigation options is what actually we are doing right here with all the stylings and everything else. And then, we get maps, but that's okay. Now, later, you get a bunch of other properties. Of course, we are not going to go through all of this. I'm just going to show you a couple. And some of them we will use on the practice project. Just going to show you a couple just so you can see how to apply these visual options. So for example, it says right here, mode. So if we go to the application reloaded and I go to users, we can see that the default behavior is kind of a fading at the top on the header and sliding, to the screen. So you can set this up. You can say, okay, I want to cart at a modal. You can disable the default and go to this ones. For example, I'm going to go and say mode, and notice that this one goes after the navigation options. I have it right here. I was testing it, of course. So if I go right here and say reload, we get the go to users, so we get the other kind of transition. And it says iOS and Android screen transition. This is the default. So if I go to modal, that's the one we get. Sorry for that. So it's kind of nice. And then we get the other one, which is the cart, which is the default one. If I go cart, we should be getting the default one. Right. So very cool. You get two choices. Not a lot, but And it says modal makes the screen slide from bottom, blah 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 blah. Only works on iOS. So you could set the the other one, the modal, and on Android will not apply at all. Like I told you, sometimes you just go with the flow, and whatever works on Android works, and whatever works on the other one works. All right. So of course you get some other options. Let me just check a few ones. You get the header mode, which is how the header is going to be animated. Let's just give it a try. So I'm going to do header mode, and I'm going to do float. It says render a single header that stays at the top. Right, kind of makes sense. Pretty simple. So I'm going to go and I'm going to reload the application. I'm going to go to users, and we pretty much get the same. And it's because this is a common pattern for iOS. Let's go to screen. And at one point, you're not going to notice a lot of differences. Right. So it's pretty much like the other one. And this is one we care. Sometimes, and all the explaining led to this. So most of the times, let me just disable this. Most of the times, you're going to be working on an application where you don't want a header. So maybe on this section you want to disable the header, or maybe on the whole application you're going to disable the header, and at one point you're going to enable it back. And this could happen when you have a login screen where the user needs to log in, for example. You don't want a header. You just want the enter user, enter name, and after the user, then you're going to go to home or a different screen, and you're going to enable the header back. So this is one way to do it. So let me show you a couple more I kind of used in the past. And it's this one's on transition start and on transition ends. So you can chain a callback, or you can put a callback that will be invoked after the transition starts and the transition ends. And this is because, of course, the user is going from screen to screen, and sometimes you need to trigger some logic to do something on the background, or just again run a function to do something. So of course, again, this is just a function. So if we just run a function, maybe an alert, I don't know, this one is the start. I'm going to say start, whatever. So I'm going to go to the application, going to go, and we get the start. So maybe after the application starts, you want to make a network request and inject some property, so you can totally do that. That's why we get this callback. It's kind of important. All right, okay. So you can go through the documentation and play around with this visual options, but this is all it is. is just visual options. Then we get other options, for example, the navigation options. And these ones are more kind of the configuration styles, like the logo and everything else, header back image and everything else. Let's talk about this for a second.